Hello everyone, it's your favorite West Virginia in space here, and I've done at least one Mage video on this channel before, though I think I may have done two, but I can't remember. And I do want to do some more videos on that, and this is one of them I thought was really funny, or something I noticed about Mage, specifically in the Technocracy Reloaded book. Mainly is that the Technocracy, specifically the progenitors, may have completely fucked up on their mission, and have doomed themselves to abject failure and tradition victory. Now, how may you think have the progenitors doomed their entire cause and basically threw the Ascension war to the traditions? Well, let's get into it. Now, to explain how the Technocracy has thrown its victory away without realizing it, we need to go over what they're actually fighting for, specifically the Ascension War. Now, in Mage the Ascension, as you can guess, the Ascension War is a big deal. Specifically, it's what the major factions are fighting over. Yes, they may squabble over magical artifacts, secret knowledge, or personal pet projects, and these all do matter. But the endgame, the ultimate victory every major faction is seeking, is to win the Ascension War. Now, the Ascension War isn't necessarily who gets to control the world, who has the most power on the earth. It's not really that. The Ascension War is to who defines reality, specifically the consensus. Now, to break this down, Mage the Ascension is a bit of a complicated game, especially in its metaphysics, so this is just how I interpret it. There are other ways to interpret it, but all interpretations will pretty much give you what I'm telling you right now. So, effectively, in the world of Mage, either a lot of things or almost anything is possible if everyone believes in it. Or, to define it broadly, let's say you want to fly, but people don't naturally fly. This is true. So, how do you fix this? Well, you could use something like a plane, or a magic potion, or a flying carpet, or a million other different things, but you need to do something. However, all these things do equally work, but the consensus defines what can or can't work. So, for instance, if we all agree that planes can work, so you can use a plane to fly, but most people would say a flying carpet is silly and does not make sense, so therefore, if you try to use your flying carpet where most people can see you, you'll have issues. Mainly the consensus coming down on you in the form of paradox. Mages hate paradox. A mage is specifically someone who can kind of bypass the consensus and do things beyond it. This is a bit of an overcomplicated thing, but that's the gist of it. Every mage, and indeed their factions, have paradigms. The paradigm is basically what they personally believe is possible, usually outside of the consensus, but often includes elements simply of a worldview. So, for instance, the Order of Hermes are very traditionalist, kind of like Gandalf, Merlin-style wizards, while the New World Order is all men in black, suits, mind control, that kind of thing. Okay, so we got that deal, right? So, everyone fights over the Ascension War. Specifically, every faction wants something different out of it. Now, of course, every sub-faction within a larger faction has their own personal motivations. So, for instance, the traditions as a whole might want something, but the Verbana, the witch mages, might want something specific. This is even true within the Technocracy, although the Technocracy is much better organized. Now, of course, the Technocracy claims to be much more monolithic than it kinda is. Every one of its 5 conventions would probably have things slightly different if they were given a complete victory to themselves. But overall, what they all want is a ordered, safe reality of sustainable, consistent, but ultimately safe and controlled progress for the sleepers. Of course, there's a lot of slight ideas of how good or evil or corrupt the Technocracy is, but this is the overview of it. Basically, they want a safe, controlled, stable reality. So, basically, random wizards riding on dragons throwing fireballs in the middle of New York is not something they want. Obviously, because that's not their deal. They are sometimes called the techno mages, but that's not entirely true. That's just a bit of an oversimplification. Now, with that somewhat explained, how on earth the Technocracy in the latest book of Technocracy Reloaded managed to completely and utterly throw their own mission in the trash? Well, it all comes down to the progenitors messing up once again. Even in other established books, the progenitors are always somewhat a bit of a loose cannon within the Technocracy. Not as much as the Void Engineers can be, but the progenitors are basically the biohackers. They're the pharmaceutical, the mad scientists. Basically, they like to mess with biology in every single way you can because evolution is too slow. And that's basically their stick. There's a lot more sticks to them. They're a very complicated, interesting group, but that is the overview. Now, in the Technocracy Reloaded book, they tried to cover different projects or things different Technocracy groups are up to. Special projects that you can have show up in your game and all that fun stuff. Very good part of the book. And one of the progenitors have is called the Department of Metahuman Studies. Now, you think this would be like they're studying people with supernatural abilities, but no. You're thinking too small scale, my friend. This is basically the progenitors wanting to make superheroes real. Now, of course, the progenitors, really all mages, have been basically making superhumans or superpowers since the dawn of time. It's just kind of what they do. It being one of the first things that most people would ask if you got powers to break reality is, how do I basically get superpowers out of this? So, of course, the progenitors aren't the first ones that come with these issues. However, the progenitors want to make superhumans part of the consensus, which is a very different ball game than giving yourself powers, because as previously established, mages can do all kinds of things outside of the consensus, but if they try to do it where people who follow the consensus are, paradox will come down them like a steel ball. Now, this is, of course, they're drawing from advancing technologies and, of course, the popularity of superheroes to try to push them into consensus a little bit, get themselves some superheroes. Now, it is important to remember that the Technocracy does employ a lot of basically superhero type stuff. Killer Terminator-like robots called hit marks, clone soldiers, uplifted animals. They'll just do a lot of different things, right? They are not opposed to using that kind of tech at all, but they also keep them, understand they're firmly out of the consensus. They are not stuff that the average masses believe are truly possible, at least not yet. But the Department of Metahuman Studies, like I said, wants to make them real. Specifically more lower-level powered ones, like Luke Cage or Jessica Jones or Black Panther, and this is already causing problems, isn't it? So it's no secret that the world of superheroes is kind of crazy. But, I get they're trying to go for in the book, right? They're trying to go for, street-level characters. People that, the technology could definitely use to help them out. Though I'm not sure about them on the consensus, truly, at this point. But overall, that's the idea, right? Street-level things. And the book even points out how they can kind of backfire occasionally, because they're effectively playing the bad guy, the Technocracy in this case. So, their little metahumans may very likely turn on them at various points. And, of course, they can cover up or come up with all kinds of different origins for their little metahumans as they slowly bleed them into consensus. But I don't think the Technocracy thought of this one issue, how making superheroes real, even street-level ones, is going to completely doom them and lead to a tradition victory. Now, I want to ask you this question. Let's say tomorrow you were walking down the street and you happen to see a superhero. And I don't mean someone like Superman, the Hulk, or Thor. I mean a more street-level character. Your Batman, your Luke Cages, that kind of thing, right? But I must stress you, this is not like this is a guy who's kind of like Batman. I mean you're literally seeing Batman down the street punching people in the face. Or Luke Cage taking bullets as he beats up some criminals. I am saying straight up you saw these guys, or at least something so close you would instantly say, oh, it's like Batman. I'm talking that level of close is now right in front of you, right? Your entire sense of reality has probably been moderately shattered, just a little bit there. But worst thing you could possibly say for the Technocracy, the worst thought that could cross into your head right now for the Technocracy is, oh my god, superheroes are real. Because that will completely destroy the Technocracy if that gets into the consensus. Because the world of superheroes is insane. Between aliens, gods, magic, sci-fi tech, all the shame. There is not a single superhero universe where you would not allow crazy stuff if it started becoming real. Especially the major ones, like DC and Marvel. Now, how does this come back? Why does this lead to a Technocracy victory loss? I mean, they use a bunch of sci-fi tech too. Wouldn't they want to hypothetically bleed that over? Well, kinda, but it wouldn't be a control thing they could control in any meaningful way. Worst of all, it would also backfire because that would effectively lead to wild imagination, letting almost anything be real, which is basically what the traditions want in a loose sense. Now, let me ask you this question. If you just saw Luke Cage or Batman be real, and then you saw them beating up what looked like a wizard, right? Is your thought going to immediately become, oh no, wizards aren't real, there's no way magic could be real, but it's so good I have Batman beating up this guy? No, you're gonna go, oh look, not only is Batman real, but so is Doctor Strange, or Dr. Fate, or Doctor Who, I guess, even. It's like, because that is going to be your next thought. Your next thought when you see some, like, chick wearing a bunch of witch stuff isn't going to be, oh my, that is impossible. It's, oh, look, Scarlet Witch is real. You see some guy walking around, like, in pseudo-Iron Man armor, your thought's going to be, oh, that's not impossible. That's Iron Man. If you see someone running around with Norse runes, shooting lightning at somebody, your thought is not going to be, that's impossible. Your thought is going to be, it's Thor. And all of those I just described were not those characters. Those were like Order of Hermes, Nirvana, Sons of Ether, or Dreamspeaker Mage. All those are tradition mages, which means the traditions could so easily hide within the consensus if you make superheroes real, because nobody in their right mind, if they see Batman or Luke Cage or Black Panther or any of these other quote-unquote street-level heroes, or even Spider-Man, I think they mentioned. Like, if you see Spider-Man, are you just now going to not believe Iron Man's possible? I mean, Iron Man's way more possible than Spider-Man. You just saw Spider-Man beat someone up. So no matter how, if the Department of Metahuman Studies, or the progenitors, actually manage to succeed and get even low-level superheroes into the consensus, they would completely screw up everything. Because just about anything would be possible at that point, which is not what the Technocracy wants. But worst of all, it would be nearly impossible to put back in the bottle. And there's a lot of crazy stuff out there in Mage, from aliens, spirits, supernatural shenanigans, tons of sci-fi powers and magical nonsense. Simply put, they could not just lie about it and say, and somehow contain it to a low level at that point. It's not something you could put back in the bottle. Now, maybe if there was no other factions working against them, they could cover it up. But the traditions will see this and take the opportunity immediately. Because all this stuff would basically be in the consensus now. I mean, once Doctor Strange is an accepted part of your reality, there isn't much an Order of Hermes Mage can do that the masses just wouldn't accept. So ultimately, that's how the Technocracy have might well doomed themselves if the Department of Metahuman Studies actually succeeds. Because simply put, everything will be possible and the traditions will have won. Which I think has to be the funniest way the entire Mage, the Ascension world could end, or the game line could end, is that they just made Batman real and now all of a sudden the traditions have won and there's just nothing they can do about it. That sounds so utterly hilarious to me. I love it. And overall, that'd just be hilarious. But ultimately, that's just what I think. As I'd love to hear what other people think about it as well, your own opinions on Mage, or if you really want to cover more of this. Overall, that's just my opinions, and I will see you all next time.